week, the temporary solution to this is to have a subclass of the 403 visa. We'll be tabling that on the Senate. It's a disallowable instrument. We don't intend or think that there'll be any impediment to that. So once we've tabled that, it will then allow us to notify Southeast Asian countries of what this visa will look like. And then obviously we will start those bilaterals straight away. So that means that we'll be able to get moving on this basically immediately. We've done a lot of the grunt work basically as soon as we announced this visa, and now this is about the mechanics being put in place and now hoping that countries in Southeast Asia will sign up to it.
Right, so what does that mean in terms of actual countries being on board by September 30 then? Is that timeline achievable?
Look, I don't think, to be honest, that we'll see people in the country by 30 September, but earliest we would hope October, but likely November. It'll depend on those countries that want to sign up to it. We're going to start particularly those bilaterals with those countries that we have long-lasting relationships with on an immigration basis that we think will want to be able to take up this opportunity straight away. So that's what we're trying to target to make sure that we can build that capacity on top of the Pacific scheme that we've got. So it's important to understand this is complementary and supplementary to the Pacific scheme, but this is a pathway to permanent residency. It is skilled and semi-skilled workers in addition, and that's making sure that we're bringing the next generation of migrants to regional Australia, to grow regional Australia and to grow agriculture. So this is the biggest structural change to agricultural workforce in our nation's history.
Right, so that's the tool, if you like, but then there's actually getting people in via quarantine. No states have agreed for extra intake. Does that mean any people coming would have to come through Howard Springs?
Well, this isn't about extra intake. This is actually, the scale of the problem is still the same. The states are running around saying we're adding more people, adding more people. No, we've added another program. So we've got the Pacific scheme, we've now got the Ag visa, and we've also got those schemes where we're trying to incentivise Australians. So the states either don't understand or they're running from their responsibility. The scale of the problem has not changed. And in fact, on the 11th of December, all the premiers said this was a significant issue for the economy and for regional Australia. Dan Andrews was the one that came out and said this was the most significant problem facing Victoria. And yet they still haven't signed up their agreement to do their quarantining in Tasmania. So the premiers know the scale of this problem. There is a process to make sure this can be expedited without red tape, and that process is simple. The premiers write to the Prime Minister outlining the quarantine arrangements that they want to put in place in their individual states, and we sign the visas. It's as simple as that.
So it has to go through the states though. Those workers will have to go through the states. They won't go through Howard Springs?
Well, Howard Springs is being utilised by the Northern Territory. Howard Springs is also being utilised by the Commonwealth to bring Australians home. So with respect, each state's...
But those spots won't be used for these workers, the Howard Springs Commonwealth spots?
Well, some of them will be because the Northern Territory government's paying for that portion of the workers that they need. So each premier decided that they wanted to own this. They wanted to put these in addition to their caps. So they set the number of people and the method in which they bring in. Each state's done a little bit differently. In Queensland, they're allowing them to do on-farm quarantining. It's had the most, but it hasn't met the supply demands that are there. In South Australia, which is the gold standard, they've created their own facility. And they've also, this month, will be trying in-country quarantining in Vanuatu. Western Australia has let Blade and Point slip through their fingers because they wouldn't allow the Northern Territory government and them to come to an agreement to be able to quarantine workers for their grain harvest. And in Victoria, they're the other state that won't allow their workers to quarantine in their own state. They're sending them to Tasmania first. So each state's done it differently, and we've respected that. That's their sovereign right, and ultimately that's why we've made the process very simple, where the premiers and chief health officers simply write to the Prime Minister in the way that they want to safely bring these people in, and we will sign the visas.
I want to talk to you about Inland Rail. There's been reports you sent documents to colleagues that essentially urged to change the current route. Doesn't that go against what you've signed up to as a member of Cabinet?
Well, that's incorrect, and those reports were not correct.
Have you circled any material to colleagues indicating a change?
The document, well, I'll answer the question because I think this is important, Tom. There's been a lot of conjecture and a lot of commentary by journalists that haven't even bothered to ring me. They've simply taken innuendo and gossip. The facts were there was another Queensland LNP member that created this document. Barnaby Joyce's office asked the Queensland LNP members and senators impacted by this to come together. That document that was created by this member and senator was in fact presented to the Queensland LNP members impacted by Inland Rail, and then that was presented to the Deputy Prime Minister. That was not my document, and to say so would be a lie and a fabrication.
But the question was whether you circulated the document.
Well, the fact was I was asked on behalf of the Deputy Prime Minister to convene a meeting of Queensland LNP members about the corridor from Gundawindi to Brisbane. The fact was the Deputy Prime Minister asked me to do that, to bring them together. The fact that an independent member brought this document to the meeting and then asked for it to be sent around to all those impacted is simply me living up to my job of what the Deputy Prime Minister asked me to do.
Have you told constituents, your constituents, that you will lobby for change for the route of Inland Rail?
My statement, quite public, has been that I'm a member of Cabinet, I support the decision of Cabinet, and any decision that I'm party to in that Cabinet I support.
But have you told any constituents that you will look at or urge
I've told
change?
it quite publicly, Tom. I've told it quite publicly in not only local papers, in local TVs, but also in the Australian. So I don't know how much more public I can be.
No, but what I'm asking about privately with some of your constituents.
Yes, I've advised them that I'm bound by Cabinet, and the decision by Cabinet is one I support and one in which that I will get on with in supporting the Deputy Prime Minister. But if the Deputy Prime Minister asks me to do something on his behalf, out of his portfolio, then of course I'll do that as well if it's impacted not only my electorate but Queensland LNP members and senators.
Did you discuss altering the route with Barnaby Joyce as part of condition for supporting him for leadership?
No.
No discussion in any way on that topic?
No, there was no discussion with any of the candidates on anything. The facts were that spill has come and gone, and we're now getting on with it. There was no discussion whatsoever.
And you've got no concerns about the route and where it goes through your electorate?
Well, of course I've got concerns, Tom, and as a local member I'll continue to work with the Deputy Prime Minister and the Department of Infrastructure and ARTC to make sure that those concerns are addressed.
But not by altering the route?
Solutions. Well, no, the route is locked in, Tom,
okay.
And the engineering solutions in which we can get across there to appease the concerns, which primarily around flooding, and quite rightly so. These are people's livelihoods and homes that are at risk. So we'll obviously work with ARTC to make sure those concerns are addressed with science, with engineering and hydrology.
Okay, just finally, your colleague mentioned the national plan yesterday, Stuart Roberts, saying, well, it's subject to change. Is he just echoing the reality of what the states and the power they hold here?
Well, the reality is we work as a federation, and while we've had challenges as a federation that have been for all to see, particularly over the last week or two, the Prime Minister is trying to show leadership in bringing us together to get us out of this COVID nightmare and to get us people back up to normal living as best we can. And to do that, we need cooperation, we need to work together, but we need leadership. And the Prime Minister is showing leadership. We just need the Premiers to show some leadership with him, take his hand, have some courage and conviction, and go on this journey together to get Australians back to as normal living as we possibly can.
Minister David Littleproud, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me, mate.